which are far superior to the models anyway created in terms of energy efficiency. So now I request the MD to address all of us and tell us how can we make our city much more energy efficient and green.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal. I think you were speaking of somebody else. So, I don't recognize the man you're talking about, all right? Apart from the traveling bit, yes, I'm 15 passports, so that's my only thing. I actually believe, through my travels across the world, that democracy exercises itself through localities and people. And it gets audited every election for the relevance of the work. So India is a democracy. Most of the countries which got independence post-colonization experimented with democracy. But democracy is a very strange word. Every country has their own innovative way of defining democracy. And the evolution of democracy is through hiccups. An immense number of hiccups. The American system, the European system is also. Those countries which actually got independence post-Second World War, most of them attempted democracy. The fact is that amongst all of them, most of them either turned autocratic or benevolent dictatorships. India is the sole example of having survived that temptation. Why? Because there is a history of social interaction and society which binds diverse interest groups, castes, and fragmented languages through a concept of unified survival for a community. Number two, we have a lineage of culture which most of us are slowly trying to obliterate under the Western garb of modernism. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how hard you try, it's the Mark Twain saying that now at 45, I think my father is improving, so we all turn like our ancestors sooner or later. So with that background, I believe that there is an immediate solution possible. We've researched for 6 years. And on energy efficiency, there is a separate research. So first thing is understanding the problem is 50% of the solution. The present population of Gurgaon is all there. The projected population is 4.25 million. More than 37% of population is below 18. 62% of population is children, women and old people. So who's our segment we are talking about? So it's a young and aspirational city. Let's understand the identity of Gurgaon. The identity of Gurgaon is confused. The social scenario is unequal and divided. The utility infrastructure is inadequate. Public transportation is poor. Sense of security is hostile. There's a toll plaza there which is a growth dampener. And the livability index is medium to low. And we call this the Millennium City of India. So Metrovalley believes in the philosophy called Sargun Sampan. In any democracy struggling with population, economic hiccups, class and social divide, hunger, poverty, healthcare, developmental imbalances, and lack of resources, the kind of city planning solutions required have to be dramatically different from those which are being explored by the West. There is a strange myth that a city in America called New York is a happening city. There's a city in Singapore. Singapore is a city-state, happening city. Let's transplant it. It doesn't work. Ladies and gentlemen, it never works. See Shanghai. See parts of it. There is a local culture. So what do we say? I said there are 6 or 7 things that need to be factored. There's a society. There is industry which gives jobs. There is ecology, which is sustainability. Then there is culture. Then there is society. So all of these, and since we are resource starved, have to have the principle of 4 R's, which is reuse, recycle, restore, and then our solutions, since we don't have enough funding, have to be ecologically responsive, socially inclusive, economically relevant, and culturally stimulating. Cities, ladies and gentlemen, are not smart. It is people who make cities smart. It is the vibrancy of their communities that makes cities smart. Because the moment you have technology as the only basis for city design, we at Metrovalley believe that the obsolescence of the city starts the moment you take a decision. However, if you include people in the process of city building, they create communities and they actually select the technologies which will give them the lifestyle which they can actually create from where they can create more from less. So issue is, what are the 4 facets we at Metrovalley believe are critical? So we said, let's see the solution for tomorrow's urban India. Economy. First thing, economic survival, whether it be of individual, family, organization, or community, is critical. Culture. You cannot wash away culture of 5,000 years under the carpet just by changing clothes. There is a large social fabric in India. That's what makes us who we are. And then, above all, there is a critical need to create the environment, the right environment, which is sustainable, which consumes less and produces more. So these, and we listed out our targets. So these are, it's a 250-page document which I'm trying to run through in 20 minutes. It's like seeing a trailer of a 3-hour movie in 2.5 seconds. So this was a master plan which was designed by the Haryana government. So we believe that whatever system has been done, we have to work around it. We don't want to change it. We have to build with it. This is their rail, RRTS and metro, their transportation. This is their bus transit planning. And these are the road planning that they had done. Taken this for granted. We're not changing this. Let's look at the roadmap for equitable and inclusive. Equity is the first sign of a democracy functioning. And equity is in opportunities and access. Not everyone is as fortunate as we are. There are other people who actually are less fortunate. The state must create infrastructure which takes them into the mainframe of development and results. So let's move on. First we said, let's have a look at the storm water and surface drainage. So we studied, water is the war of the future. You cannot win this war by technology. And we said, let's see, 40% goes in evaporation, 5% in surface runoff, 15% shallow infiltration, 35% deep infiltration. These are figures. Nobody knows how much happens. Because the more you concretize, the less water goes inside. So we studied water pattern in the whole area. Then we studied the whole sewage economy. What's happening? There's a deficit of 1.3 million gallons per day which needs to be met. Because you cannot talk of cities unless you talk of water, you talk of sewage, you talk of garbage, because these are what make cities unclean, unlivable. Then we said, what are the other things? Potential resources. And please understand, I see all these as resources. I am not seeing them as problems. These are resources. Then we said there were some open green spaces there. But when we started calculating, it actually worked out that you have in green spaces a huge and unprecedented opportunity. They have got 30 meters green belt on side of roads. They have got something like 3,700 acres of gardens. Green belts another 2,800. Then there were natural conservation. Once you add all this up, one question was asked to me that why don't we have a city like New York? I visited. we've given word the Central Park. Gurgaon has green belts and areas that are 7.82 times the area of Central Park, just that they are not visible because we don't recognize them. So this potential exists. We can be better than New York. So what is the new mantra for cities? So we decided we have tenets laid out, and we'll see finally that if we have achieved them or not. An equitable city for all. Ladies and gentlemen, my focus is on equity, because all of us claim to be democratic. Secondly, affordable living. The problem of cities is, and that's what happens to London, you go and buy a Coke, £1.90. In Oxford Street, you buy it 3 kilometers outside, 0.65. So, what happens with cities? Smart cities, big cities. The cost of real estate gets added to every transaction. And that brings about inequity. The roads decide that the city is meant for those with cars. It scares people who want to walk away. Urban planning is a mess. The West can afford it because they can afford to drive in cars. But they also go in metros. Right? In India, it's below our status to use the metro. So what happens? Cities get built around the aspiration of cars or the dream of life around cars. But we are a poor country. So then third thing is you create new jobs in the city. Employment is what makes city vibrant. Number 4, healthy city life. None of us understand that over the period in years, we have seen how the quality of our lives has silently depreciated without our being able to do anything or contribute anything. It's the role of urban planning and cities. Number 5 is reduce vehicular congestion. Because I am a strong believer in the fact that vehicles, one iron tank houses one man and tries to destroy 5 on the road. That's the car. So vehicular congestion has to be reduced by alternate planning methods. Access has to be created. Then comes the concept, number 6, zero waste. Waste comes after all this. The first 5 things relate to human lives, in communities, people. Then comes zero waste. Because if you give people all this, they are preserved by making it zero waste. Then there is slum-free development. Why do we have to have inequity staring at us in any city? There are so many solutions which are possible if we have a willpower to create slums into slum owners into stakeholders in the city development. That's all. Number 8 is foster human talent. You see, cities cannot be built. You need to have talent to nurture cities and their growth. People will migrate. The attraction of cities is always there for the young. The city's growing needs and demands need new talent and abilities. And that talent has to be addressed locally. You cannot transplant it from a college because the context of each city is different from the other. Last thing, which is so critical, integrate the villages into the life. The outlying villages are actually what people are scared of. They are the bastions of crime. Why? Because it's inequitable. This is their way of saying this was our land, you come and taken it over, now you want to fight me. You have to make sure that the village economies around that benefits from the growth of the city and gets integrated in the city so that it suits them to keep their land because the revenues from their land and the returns from their land will keep growing. And if that keeps growing, then it is in their benefit that the city gets preserved and grows. So let's put this into 4 action plans. Unfortunately, I'm not talking much about technology. I'm talking about people because I think that people create a very, very dynamic force which can change the whole concept of city planning across the world. First thing is connect people to nature. We did a study with Carnegie Mellon on the impact of computers on human beings. It insulates them, makes them introverts. They don't want to go out. The same with televisions. We found that people who are in IT industry have major problems in communication with their family. It's a fact. Gentlemen, this is our research. Right? We've spent millions of dollars in research across the world. So what do? The first thing is that people do not get out. Why don't they get out? Because no parent wants their kids to go out. Why? Outside the street is dominated by cars. It's not a safe street. It's not an equitable street. So, connect people to nature. I don't have time. Then secondly, fulfill people's and society's needs. There is a dominant need bank waiting to be addressed in every city. Has somebody ever researched them? We studied cities, 3 cities in India and 3 abroad. And we found that aspirations of most of the people across geographical divides is practically the same. They want the same things. People in America are still seeking the same thing as people in Pune. Very surprising. Bring places closer. Because when you bring places closer, you bring people closer. The concept is that a city which is distant is dysfunctional. There's a concept called cluster development. That's what we did in college. So what happens is, cluster development is the only way because we are clusters. Our culture is like that. And the last thing is smart infrastructure. There are too many experts here to speak about smart infrastructure. But yes, zero waste, right? Recharge groundwater. We know all this. It doesn't need to be said again. But the issue is how to do it. So first thing we said is Gurgaon has a single mall street. Now that it is the heartthrob of everything and it's the biggest social event. You go to a mall, it costs you 500 rupees. For a person who's earning 6,000 rupees a month, he can't go. He will only watch outside. So we said what? Let's break up the social venues. Please understand. I grew up in a time when romance existed. Right? Yeah. When boys and girls met and romanced, there was a concept to sit down, they had time to breathe, they had time to chat, move. Now, go to a movie, spend 500 rupees a day, go home. Where is the time to stand and stand? Right? And so therefore the city must provide spaces for social interaction amongst the young so that they grow healthy and not abnormal. So we said, you can't, a guy in college cannot afford to take somebody out twice a month, he'll go bankrupt. So what happens is, we have to break it up, make it cost effective, make it available. Places have to come to people. Why should people go to places? The moment people start going to places, they use cars. If places come to people, then democracy comes home. So we decided we'll create 23 clusters in Gurgaon. Now what do these clusters do? They do daily social and cultural amenities, access and transport, public utilities, sports and wellness. We said 23 of these across the city, accessible within 10 minutes of walking distance. What do they do after that? What do each of them contain? And this is a large 250 pages document. So what happens is, we've provided for sports, we've provided for food, but food where the village economy gets linked up. It's the heart economy. The villagers come and sell their vegetables. There are multi-purpose halls, there are service centers. The issues of e-governance as we were talking about, well, our solution was that all these 23 become centers for supplying all the needs of the cluster around them, whatever variety, services to the government. And this is not done by the government, it's given to a private agency, charges 10 rupees, gives you cell phone. Right? So what happens is you create a cluster like this, you create reading rooms for old, you create libraries for young, you create for aspirants of civil services or other exams, give them computer rooms, you train people on computers, you ask housewives to come there and start doing cooking. You can actually have homework classes during afternoon there because the kids can walk in there. What happens? The city starts buzzing. It becomes a vibrant city. Secondly, in economics you all understand that economy, I used to make motorcycles, right? Motorcycles, you have survived in India, even though the technology is from overseas, the same motorcycle made elsewhere costs 2.5 times, but the economy is scale. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not saying something new, but unless the land as a resource can use the principle of creating economies of scale by having more functions per square foot, per day, per person, we are not going to be having a city which will generate revenues. So what happens is, in case of all this, we believe that cities take a lot of money to build and lot more subsidies to maintain. We believe this is the method in which cities can actually generate revenue for their own development. So after this, we actually have studied the possibility of using water, wastewater, sewage water, all kinds of water. We have changed the whole connectivity face of Gurgaon. We have changed the roads. Our new Gurgaon plan has far more last 100-meter connectivity than perhaps any city in India does. Secondly, people are the eyes of the city. The problem is regulators believe that they have to govern the city. Right? Yes. Right? The fact of the matter is that if governance is only restricted to appreciating what people do, it's corporate governance. If control is given to people, then actually they manage themselves better. There is a myth that people are not. There is a Chinese philosopher who said that people in masses are not right. Obviously, therefore, they went into communist way. We are democratic. We believe that large number of people are capable of taking their own decisions well. So we did a whole lot of road sections. Why? Because we made roads people friendly. Cars come in third. People first, public transport next, cars last and fourth. And we believe that sir, you are making metros all over. It's the same metro. Why can't we have a platform, a walkway, skyway under the platform? It doesn't cost us money. It creates for people in existing towns a place to walk. There is no way anyone can walk in Metrovalley Gurgaon where I stay. In the evening, where the pedestrians are supposed to walk, cars are going. Well, how will the kids get out of homes? And when you create metros, just create a platform. It's an 8% more expense. But look at the benefit. You add a road to the sky. Safe, untouched, unpolluted. It's possible. We've just done it here. Then we created 300 kilometers of bicycle tracks. In Gurgaon today, in the present plan, it's possible. Provided we have a priority for people who go on bicycles. Our kids did, if the place is okay. Then we said, smart utilities and management of utilities. Here is an expert, Keshav Verma is here on this, he understands all that. How underground utilities can actually take less space, can be managed by remote sensing. This is where technology then walks in. Technology is a layer on top of this. You can go and catch a problem within 30 minutes of any crisis because this is connected. Having done all this, ladies and gentlemen, for all this thing that we have done and created, the total land area required is only 7% of the area. 93% still remains green, untouched, and we have provided all the facilities, everything that exists in a city or you want in a city. Now what is the benefit of the plan that we have done? We create increased tree cover and vegetation. We plant 2,24,000 trees. Carbon sequestration of 7,474 tons annually. The rest, I mean, there is so much possible. It's embarrassing to talk about it. So, then what happens? We have created a sewage and biodiversity grid. Because Sultanpur Lake happens to be there, birds come in. Now you have to create that grid along this thing. This can be an extension of Sultanpur Bird Sanctuary, and the quality of people's lives will improve. Let's talk of New York now then, in Gurgaon. And believe me, what we are doing is, we are creating 23 community hubs, 150 neighborhood hubs, and we are creating different timings for use. Why should schools? My question is, you have a primary school, it needs 3 acres for kids to play. How many hours do they play? 2 hours. What happens in school after that? No, they charge for that time in the fees. Let these kids come in buses, come to public park, give the schools a place to stay. You say that. Kids come on the street, and they come out in the playpens in the open spaces. Believe me, the city is vibrant from morning. What are the other benefits? So we are talking of safety. Then comes entrepreneurial training in urban areas. Skill development. Skill development is not about the poor. I go and learn cooking sometimes when I'm in a restaurant. And people who maintain and preserve these, that's 150,000 people required. Now those people, apart from this, there will be 5,000 businesses which will come in this city. Small and medium enterprises, 5,000 is the minimum. Then let's move on. Up to 249,000 tons of organic waste is recycled. It is a huge potential. It can 60% reduction in central waste treatment plant. Look at the cost reduction. 130,000 tons of inorganic garbage sorted annually in the central. We have money, sir. Give them a plot of land, sort out waste. Believe me, 10,000 people will be employed in this. Up to 18 crores saving in cities' garbage transportation only. 9,200 plus new jobs created from waste. Up to 195 million liters per day of treated water is generated through decentralized sewage treatment plants. Which means what? 52% fresh water demand reduction can happen locally, and 32% fresh water demand can happen in the city. So if you need less water, it's a smart city, I guess. Up to 66 million liters per day of treated water to be sent to 23 lakes. Gurgaon has no lake. We have created 23 lakes. All this water then seeps into the ground. The groundwater table goes up. And then our dependence on groundwater reduces. Up to 13 crores in sewage pumping electricity. 13 crores annually in sewage pumping electricity. 23 new lakes. And 66 days of water supply to the city is available in case of crisis. In those lakes are purified. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the economic data sheet of the design. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.